Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
Welcome to BookTok for BookTok, a literary podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels. This summer, we are hosting our Romantasy Edition, a book club, while we prepare for a 15-part literary analysis of Sarah J. Maas's House of Sky and Breath. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and each week we'll discuss one book from our summer book club roster. By using our literary background, we'll provide our first blush analysis of each book, as well as discuss listener thoughts.
This week, we'll be discussing Bride by Ali Hazelwood. The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of the many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text. Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
We have been waiting a while to do this one.
It's been so long of us teasing one another of like, I can't wait to talk about this.
Because we keep not talking about it.
And now here we are, finally ready to talk. What will we do? Talk.
I honestly don't know. It's been so long since I've read the book now.
I know, I am worried about that. But luckily, we don't have to worry too much because we polled our listeners and we said, hey, everyone, send us what you like and what you didn't like. And they did, because they're awesome.
They did.
Yeah.
And they have opinions.
Oh, absolutely. Love opinions. Love opinions.
Their opinions, all opinions are valid.
Only our listeners' opinions are valid.
Okay. All of our listener opinions are valid.
Anyone who's not our listener, their opinion's not valid. Yeah. Amy's face looks so happy.
Yeah. Okay. It's hurting my soul, but let's go.
No, how about we start with our first blush, as you say in the intro.
In the intro.
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I liked it.
So I will say I haven't read a lot of Ali Hazelwood. I've read a couple and I've enjoyed all of them.
Yeah.
And I do think for me, this book of the few that I've read had the best humor out of all of them. And her narrative style is very funny, is very witty. But I thought she was like at the top of her game with her humor in this one.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed every element of it. And it didn't bother me that it was virgin core smut.
Virgin core smut. I mean, you're not wrong, but
it was, that to me was secondary to everything else because I really liked the characters. I liked the storyline. I liked the way she utilized the vampire and werewolf tropes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't feel like I could complain. But it was a very lighthearted thing, right?
We both expressed how much fun it was reading, and I think that like a book like this, that's the best way to describe it, is how fun it is. I like, similar to you, because we share Audible accounts. I've also read some of Ali Hazelwood, not every single thing in her collection, but I do think that as a writer, you can tell she's really grown as a writer in this book.
Mhm.
She's hit her stride, and this is her first paranormal book.
Mhm.
Everything else has
Mhm.
been normal book, and this is para. So it's always a risky jump, and I'm
Mhm.
actually really impressed that her editor let her do it, because sometimes you're kind of stuck in your lane. And
Mhm.
you know how I feel about werewolves, Amy.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah.
Big fan of werewolves.
And here's the thing, werewolves are borderline, and vampires, overly done,
Yeah.
and oftentimes not done well.
I'm gonna argue that it's harder to do werewolves than it is vampires.
I agree with that. I agree.
One of my all-time favorite books is Blood and Chocolate. I reread that last year, and then I went through this, like, werewolf kick, and nothing satisfied my werewolf scratch the way that this book
Mhm.
did.
Yeah, I think it did a really, really great job,
Mhm.
and it's a gateway to some paranormal
It's a
topics that I
gateway.
know we'll discuss.
I know not of what you say.
Why? Why? But it was good. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so before we get into other things, let's talk about world building. So I have the notes here. I'm going to read a couple of these right off the bat. Loved how casual of a fantasy it was. It was an easy read. I'm always a sucker for a vampire werewolf. Interesting fantasy system. I
Mhm.
think the system was pretty interesting, especially when you get into the science of it all. Because then I'm almost like, is
Mhm.
this almost borderline science fiction? Because
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
wasn't just like we were bitten and the moon goddess now makes us shift into the night. It's like we have different DNA.
Mhm. Mhm. It's yeah, we can't procreate because our DNA is sufficiently different.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I feel like it wasn't as strong on the science as Allie Hazelwood's other work.
Hmm.
You could still tell there were elements of that background in the story. And I do feel like, well, maybe the concept of three different species living together in the world and trying to understand how to make it all work, that might not be new. I felt like she had a unique spin on the
Yes.
coexisting species.
Yes. I mean, maybe like someone else out there is being like, no, she totally ripped it off of X, Y, and Z.
Right,
But as
right.
far as I've known, I haven't seen something like this. And especially with like the different color blood.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
you like talk about like Ali Hazelwood using just like the smallest bit of her background and me being like, wow, that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's called
Well,
science.
but what I loved even more about it is that when they blush, their faces turn
Yeah.
different colors, right?
Yeah.
So when wow, it's been long enough that I don't even
Green. Who is
remember
green?
the werewolves.
Werewolves.
I was gonna say what's the love interest's
Low.
name?
Like Lowe's
Lo, thank you.
hardware.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
That was
thank
my
you.
biggest
Hi
issue.
his face turns kinda like olive green
Yeah.
because he's blushing. I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's so
It
cute."
was really sweet.
Weird to think about, but a great use of what you know about human anatomy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like it's one of those facts that any author could have just, like, thrown in, but then to add the
Mhm.
details of, like, blushing and other like, those types of things, I just be like, "That's genius. That's called science." And I would be such a sucker, I'd be like, "You know what? Love avocados. Green's my favorite color." It's not, but it almost looks like it would be
Yeah,
with all of
yeah.
this. I very much enjoyed the one of the comments one of the listeners says was, "I read that she spelled vampire with a Y, and I was out."
Oh, no.
Like, fair, but also you should try it again.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if Jennifer Armentrout can get away with calling her whatever's Wolven, you can deal with a Y in the vampire.
I actually, like, read The Y and the Vampire. I was like, "Oh, so these are edgy vampires. These aren't your
Yeah,
normal
a
vampires."
vampire.
Vampire?
Vampire.
They're not vampires, they're vampire. Can't help that they're too fancy for you.
See, I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't even know that there was a Y
I was
involved.
so busy trying to not let the experience go too fast that I kept topping back between reading and listening, where it was like, "Don't
Oh.
go. I love this so much." Another thing about the world building, and maybe this is going into a little bit of the plot development and the writing style, but I, for one, enjoyed the way we got the information at the pacing we received the information
Mm,
of the world.
yeah, I agree. I felt the same way when I was listening to the audiobook. And I think, again, it goes back to the unique voice
Mhm.
that Ellie Hazelwood gives her female characters,
Yeah.
especially. And the dry, jaded, slightly always annoyed, but also kind of optimistic perspective of the main character just kind of allowed that information to trickle
Yeah.
in a fun way.
Yeah.
And I was never annoyed at when we got information versus didn't get information.
Yeah, and I think we got a couple of different contradicting comments on it. Some people also liked the way that we got the info. Other people
Hmm.
felt like it was a little too confusing and they didn't get everything right away. And
Mm,
one of the hard things when you pace out the writing, when you pace out the world development, right, and the answers, it gives time for the reader to fill in the holes incorrectly
hmm.
so that when
Hmm.
they get something, they've already inferred the wrong bit of information and
Yeah.
they have what they think. So it is I like I like this way of getting info, but I also do see the risks that you're inevitably going to have with it.
Yeah, I understand that because I think something authors struggle with just as much as the readers do
Mhm.
is what is the right amount
Yeah.
and the right pace.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's up to personal preference.
Mhm.
I think also something that I know I myself as a writer struggle with is I like logic games.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give you information where you're being led along in a logic game to see if you can deduce correctly the information I'm not
You
giving
would.
you.
You would.
I
You
would. And
would.
and sometimes people, and I do this too sometimes when I'm
Mhm.
speeding through stuff, you do, like you said, fill in information that isn't actually there.
Yeah.
You just make an inference. And then that destroys the whole logic game and then it gets very
Yeah.
confusing. So I could see how a little bit of that is coming into play here in Bride.
I feel like I can imagine the way you go about it because I haven't read all of your book. I've only read like the first couple chapters. I like to imagine you as Jigsaw from the Saw movies, where it's you're guiding them along. You're like, I want to play a game. It's called a logic game. Let's see if you're going to figure this out.
I want to play a game. You don't want to play
Yeah.
a game, but you don't get a
You're, you know,
choice.
you're not going to get a choice and you're going to find out. And I'm somehow going to hurt your feelings along the way.
Probably. Yeah, that sounds about
But like in a
right.
fun, enjoyable way.
Yeah, it's like an escape room.
My books are like escape rooms. You want to leave, but you can't because you're trapped.
Which I can understand why that might not be palatable to everybody.
I palette it. I would love to palette
Yeah,
it.
you're sure?
No. Okay, so this was an interesting tidbit that only one person called out, and I can't remember if this was under their like likes or don't likes. So I'm sorry if I'm not saying it in the right context, but the little bits of Homeboy's perspective before each chapter.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I loved those.
I did too, because it always made me it's an interesting choice, though, and
Yeah.
I do wanna talk about the why.
Because some of them were spoilery.
Yes, yes, they're definitely spoilery, but I think that was important in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
We're already getting into the why. Because I think Misery is so clueless sometimes
Mhm.
that having the snippets of Lo's perspective at the start of each chapter was necessary for us to stick around for the ride.
Yeah.
For us to be like, okay, this is going to have some romance in it. We're going to get there. I just don't know how or when.
Uh-huh.
But I think it added extra tension, which I enjoyed.
I think that's a great way of putting it, that it added extra tension because, I'm reflecting. I'm like, sometimes I got annoyed because I'm like, he's into her. Stop being stupid, Misery. But that's literally what
Mm.
she's doing that's called tension. So
Right. Exactly.
I will say sometimes it would be sometimes I did feel like it was spoilery. I can't recall which chapter, but there was a couple times where it almost felt like a little preview of what's to come, right? And then
Mhm.
it was just kind of like very much a specific choice of like, this little snippet is going to tell you that things are going to be all right at the end of this chapter, when I didn't need
Mhm.
those necessarily.
That's fair. I felt like it also spoiled when he essentially was going to gaslight her
Yeah.
and make her think that he didn't really care. Like you knew it was
I have
coming.
so much to talk about with that. With the
We're not there yet.
we're not there, but listener, we're gonna.
Mhm. 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 Let's ask this question. Was that little snippet of his perspective at the start of each chapter necessary? Or did Hazelwood do it purely for
Style.
style? Yeah.
Great
Or
question.
uniqueness?
Great question. I'm going to argue, and let me form my argument because I don't know. I'm going to say it is necessary
Mhm.
because I think that we don't get enough of Lo from Misery's
Mhm.
perspective.
Yeah.
And we need to know, even if it's a little tiny glimpse, that there's more to Lo going on in the background.
Yeah.
You know, these are things that we could guess, right? He's alpha male wolf. He's secretly in love with her. He's going to kill anyone that's going to hurt her. I eat it up, right? Like, that's fine. But
Mhm.
I do think that the fact that it was in third person was interesting to me. It
Mhm.
felt
Mhm.
disconnected, which then made
Mhm.
me feel like Lo is trying to disconnect from his own feelings too. And I felt
Okay.
like that also kind of set up more of who he was too.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I'm going to argue I think it was necessary for no sake other than to help the reader fall in love with Lo and want Lo and Misery together.
Yeah.
And I say that because, like you, or like you said, we don't get enough of Lo from Misery's perspective to really learn about him,
Hmm.
understand him. But we learn about him through those moments, like when he cuts a piece of his shirt out that she's touched and he keeps it in his
Oh
pocket.
my God. That's some
And
like Regency Darcy bullshit that I love.
I know. And we never see Misery find out about it.
Yeah.
He never tells her about it, which if he had would have been like gag worthy, right? It's so cringy, but for us to know the action was done
Yeah.
and it's just something he tucks
It's
away.
only romantic if
Mwah.
you don't know about it and other people watch and you like it. Otherwise, then it's creepy.
We're voyeurs. Let's just be real.
I Yeah.
So yeah, I think those moments were necessary for me to really root for Lo and root for Misery and Lo to be together.
I think that is absolutely valid. And I totally forgot about the little pocket moment. And that was sweet. That was really sweet. So here's another comment that I feel like goes a little bit back and forth.
Mhm.
When I say back and forth, I mean some people say one thing and people say otherwise. The pacing of the book. Some people
Mhm.
felt that it went a little too quickly, especially when you get into the ending. I don't know if we want to get into the ending of the book, but let's talk about like the pacing of the overall book.
Interesting. I think I liked how fast it was
Mhm.
because we get enough about the outside world to kind of understand it, but Misery's not living in that world. She's stuck in a
Yeah.
house, right? So it doesn't feel necessary inundated in
Mm.
that.
Mhm.
And when you're trapped in a house, we all lived it in the pandemic, time kind of blurs together
Yeah.
and it either goes really fast or really slow and you're not quite sure what you're going to get.
Yep.
So I felt like the pacing of the book was appropriate given the setting that Misery finds herself in. I liked it because there wasn't a lot of extra layers. You know, this wasn't an SJM book where there's a lot of different plot lines happening,
Yeah.
a lot of different character perspectives
Yep.
happening. So for what it was, which is one point of view,
Mhm.
first person, someone stuck in a house, I think it was good.
I agree. I think that there was a moment when I was holding the book and I was like, this is a very small book. And
Mhm.
we are getting so much information. We're getting so much, there's a lot of work happening. And not
Mhm.
just in world building, but I want to say like in making us care about the characters, in
Yeah.
establishing who they are as people and establishing everything. I mean, and we even started with a flashback. And
Yep.
that's impressive because that's like I'm not saying you're wasting time, but like that's, that's a lot of time that you're putting into something and to not go linear.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when it comes to like pacing, it's an A minus because the
Mm.
only part is the minus is the very end when everything goes down. And I don't know if we want to talk about that right away, but I do agree that, let's talk about it.
My input was not actually asked for. It was
Well, I was waiting for you to say something.
I was like, no, I'm teasing you.
Okay.
I'm teasing you. Please continue.
I keep thinking you're frozen.
I'm letting you talk. I'm not trying to interrupt you.
I know, but you don't blink either.
Oh, that I didn't realize. I can't really control that one.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
I just think that the ending was the thing that was like went too fast for me.
What about it went too fast?
So there's no way to talk about the ending without talking about the plot. And the main plot being that Misery's friend was kidnapped and we don't know where she is. And everything from Misery and Lo having sex at the apartment to the ending was just like, we're hitting all these points. Like they're kidnapped. Now they're breaking out. Now her dad has them. Now they're busting out and now they kill them and now they're done. And I don't know how I'd fill it up with space. I don't know what I would do to make up for the things that I'm saying. But I do feel like a lot of other parts of this book, she did spend time, especially when you consider like the best, or not the best friend, the little girl, his little sister. Lo's little sister. And, you know, we got enough time with her that, like, I love that kid. We got enough time with
Yeah.
a lot of other things. And again, I don't know. I think it's hard when it comes to climaxes and endings to not
Mm-hmm.
want to speed through it because you're kind of like hitting your stride and you're finally wrapping things up. But that was a note I had and several listeners had with the ending. What are your thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, so I understand the perspective that, you know what, not realistic that this all happened in one sunny afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could have spent time locked away. Lo could have spent time trying to get into, you know, the tower, whatever.
Yeah.
I agree. I also feel like this is very typical for Allie Hazelwood endings, that she seeks resolution to the third act breakup
Yeah.
very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's who she is
As a writer.
as a writer, as a romantic comedy writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is her first paranormal, to my knowledge, as you know,
Yeah.
maybe a first fantasy. So she doesn't have the background that we're accustomed to when it comes to fantasy novels.
Yeah.
I didn't expect her to execute something the way Sarah J. Maas would.
Yeah.
Because that's not the focus of her writing. The focus of her writing are these character relationships and resolving the relationships.
Such a good point.
Yeah, it's fast, but I didn't come here for a fantasy story. I came
Yeah.
here for a romantic comedy.
That's fair. And to your point, she is very character bit like driven. Like her stories are character stories. We're not here for a larger political driven plot. But
Right.
her style of writing it's interesting. And this isn't a critique on her. So Allie, if you're listening, this is not a thing against you. But it is very much like okay, they've broken up and I don't want to live with this anymore. Like, I don't want this. I don't want them to be upset. I don't want this to go on. This hurts me more than it hurts you. I'm going to put them back together.
Yeah, and that's okay. There are writers like that. They don't want to wallow in the angst. Jacqueline.
Who?
You know, so that's just not how some people are built, and that's not what some people come to read.
Yeah.
And I don't read Allie Hazelwood to have an angsty time.
No.
So
you're here for a good time, not a painful time.
Exactly. And I'm not here for a long time either. I'm here for the quick win, for the low-hanging fruit.
I mean, my biggest complaint with this book is that it wasn't longer. Like, and I don't mean that in the sense that like this like the pacing was too fast. I mean, like, I'm mad that it's done. I'm mad.
Yeah, because you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm mad that I don't get to like relive that for the first time again. It was just such a enjoyable time. I think this book shows how far Allie's come as a writer.
I agree.
She's done a wonderful job. I would love to see more of these books that require action sequences that have a little bit more high stakes. I would love to see that in 4 books from now, because I think that she's proven that she is capable of growing as a writer, which is impressive because not that this is anything bad, I support this entirely. She used to write fan fiction, and she used to write Kylo Ren from Star Wars and Rey fiction.
Yeah. And this is the first book of hers that I've read that I didn't see those tropes.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And it was a breakaway from that. And I think that you can see the progression of her breaking away from what she got into the scene for, and absolutely knocked it out of the park, in my opinion. And it makes me think that, you know, I'm like, Allie, keep going with these fantasy, these paranormal. I have full faith in you. Give me a series by the last. I know in a couple books you will be fantastic. Not that she's not fantastic now.
Yeah, but I totally understand and I totally agree. I think that she's grown a lot as a writer, and depending what she wants of herself, she could continue to grow as a writer. However, she has become popular in a very niche way that has a very specific formula, and it works for her. She has made it work time and time again, and Bride is no different.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, she dabbled in the sense that it's like werewolves and vampires, but the formula is still there.
But the formula of the story structure is still there.
Yeah.
And if this is your first exposure to Allie Hazelwood and you're expecting something like all the other paranormal romances you've read, you're not going to get what you're looking for.
No.
But if you're here having read Allie Hazelwood, you enjoy her romantic comedy, you're going to enjoy this regardless of whether or not it's paranormal.
Yeah. And as someone who reads paranormal romance, I went on a journey of werewolf romance last year. This was a breath of fresh air. Like, I do not think werewolf romances are done very well. I think that, like, she was a breath of fresh air in two regards. One, if you are deep in paranormal romances, love werewolves, it was just it was like, it was a formula that's so different. Even though it's very the same, you know, you still have the mate trope, you still have all that stuff going on for you,
Right.
but in a rom-com way, and you're like, "What's going on?" And then you have her rom-com loyalists, right? But then you're adding werewolves and vampires, so I think she had, like, a really good mix here, and I just wanna be like, "Allie, continue." Which, based off of the ending, I don't think this is gonna be a standalone.
Yeah, and I want to see it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I would love for her to top the market in paranormal rom-com.
Yeah. Give
Like
me that.
give give it to me. I
Mhm.
want it because I don't know how much that actually has been done in mainstream publishing.
Yeah.
And I think she's shown me she can do it well.
Yep.
She has room for growth, but I'm excited to see what comes next.
Me too. Me too. Dear Allie, please let us be, I don't know, beta reader or something. Just talk,
Oh,
please.
yeah, I was thinking that too. Let me be a beta reader, please.
Yeah, I mean, if you're like writing something, you're like, I don't know if I should do it. The answer is yes, you should. Especially if it involves showing us.
Yep. So here's another, I guess, trope that was used that some of our listeners liked. The found family. Misery feeling like she didn't belong anywhere was sad, but it was well done. And I agree. I agree that Misery grappling with this idea of like what is family because she didn't get to grow up with family.
Yeah.
And learning the value of found family. It didn't feel tropey. It felt genuine.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have family who loved her and who was there for her. Whereas, and I'm going to compare it to Akatar, right? Because we see Nesta with her found family in Silver Flames. But Nesta had sisters who would have done anything for her.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a little annoying.
Yeah.
Whereas Misery truly had no one. And so her idea of found family and allowing herself to grow that circle of found family was refreshing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think what makes it refreshing and the reason why I think it's done well is because there are elements that are grounded in reality. And I was just talking about this. I was doing a TikTok live earlier and of like what makes fantasy good for me are the emotional parts that need to be super grounded in reality so that you can believe all of these fantastical things. And for me, it's two elements. One, her dad being an absolute piece of crap. I'm trying not to curse because my mom. But and then you know, does every single person have a parent who has sold them off as a collateral? No. But I think we all understand whether they've had it or know people who have parents that aren't invested in their children's happiness and safety and everything, that kind of put their own needs ahead of them. And then I think the part that really resonates is having a sibling you don't know how to communicate to as an adult.
Yeah.
And that, and whether it's siblings or cousins or whatever it is, but a family member that you're close to as kids, and then having to rediscover one another and figure out who you are as an adult. I think that one for me is what makes it so real.
Yeah, I think so too. Kind of dovetailing off of that, I think for me, what I found really grounded in reality was this idea of Misery not having familial relationships that she understands, and then seeing someone else's familial relationships and being like, wow, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But I want it.
Yeah.
So, for example, your relationship with your cousins. I have no relationship with my cousins. So I look at your relationship with your cousins and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. that's not my reality. It will never be my reality.
But it's
And
cool.
so
It's always fun to see. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel that longing, and I
Yeah.
understand that. To me, I really connected with that
Yeah.
aspect of Misery's journey.
Yeah. I always feel that way about sisters. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we have a friend, Nicole and her sister. Whenever I see them together, I'm always like, "Ah." Even like when your sisters come out, and I know there's an age difference and stuff, but I'm always like, sisters. I am a sucker for sisters. And yeah, but I also think that if there's a lot of people who are in their 20s and their 30s where I talk to my friends way more than I talk to my family. And I talk to my
Mhm.
family a lot. Like, I talk to my
Yeah.
mom a lot, and I talk to my cousins a lot. But my friends are my family. That's just
Yeah.
kind of where that lands us. That's where we are, Amy. And as if you ever fought me on that. I think the found family trope works so well with a werewolf setting
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're coming into a pack already. It
Mhm.
lends itself really well for that, and I think that's
Yeah.
why it's very common for werewolf tropes, but at the same time it's not super common for werewolf again, just the werewolf romances that I've read. There's a certain amount of like they're already built into it. Like they're werewolves
Yeah.
themselves, and maybe they're a long lost relative, but they're always werewolves, and
Mhm.
Misery never stopped being an outsider.
Yeah.
She didn't
Yep.
suddenly become a werewolf. So it wasn't like, oh, you have werewolf blood in you. She was an outsider, and that did not change.
Yeah. And you feel that otherness
Yeah.
very distinctly through her perspective,
Yeah.
which I think people can relate to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. This next one comes out to my friend Sam. Shout out Sam. It was funny. When she messaged me, she's like, I'm reading the book for the podcast. I was like, great. And then I went to sleep. And then I woke up because she's in England and I'm here and there's a time difference. And then I woke up and it was like, okay, I finished the book. I'm like, what the? What are
Sam.
you? Sam, are you okay? She's just so fast. Okay, so she says, easy read, fun, well written, not cringe. Love that the protagonist is not a victim. Huge, huge, huge.
Yeah, I agree. And that really has to do with the victim's perspective, right? Because
Mhm.
the victim's perspective, wow, the protagonist's perspective, because there are enough elements for the protagonist to assume that they are a victim.
Yeah.
But I like that as a vampire, despite having been treated poorly her
Mhm.
entire life as collateral, as
Mhm.
other, she's still like, I'm at the top of the food chain. Like, I'm not the victim here.
Yeah. Yeah. And she also wasn't afraid to say when other people's bullshit was bullshitting.
Mhm.
Like especially that part where that other werewolf like almost tried to kill her in the hallway. And I was
Yeah.
like, God, I hope this isn't one of those like, I'm just gonna take this in silence. She was like, that bitch over there, that's the
Yeah.
one who
Yeah.
did it. And she was strong.
Yeah.
She never questioned her value,
Mhm.
even though her value is constantly being questioned.
Yeah.
I think she had a good understanding of other people's problems. Like,
Yeah.
that's their problem. And I
Yeah.
think she also realizes that she dodged a bullet not being accepted by the vampires and not being raised by them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, I agree. I think what I see in Misery is a resilience as a result of her childhood,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of being that collateral in the human world, being, pushed around,
Mhm.
pushed
Mhm.
out, and having that friendship that she has with Serena, who she has certainly learned a lot from,
Mhm.
which is just this stubbornness of I take up space and I'm going to keep that space and nobody's going to take that space from me
Yeah.
because no one else has given me a lot. I'll take what I can for myself. And I appreciate that. And I think that that made both Serena
Mhm.
and Misery very real to me.
Yeah.
I could forgive the virginity because she was such a stubborn character, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
She wasn't a woe is to me, I'm a victim and I'm a virgin. It was just a nope, I'm here. I'm going to call you out on your bullshit. I just happen to be a virgin.
And she just happens to be a virgin. Yes. I also think when it comes to like Misery, while you're saying that she's very much like, hey, I'm here, I'm going to take up space, which all of that is yes, she can be a complex character and also still
Mhm.
struggle with not having anything of her own.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Like, she was just existing. And talk
Mhm.
about a thing that so many people relate to, that stresses me out, that stresses other people out, where it's like, you live your life, you go to work, you come home,
You sleep.
you go to sleep, like,
Yeah.
and then are you happy with that? You know, I think it was, I mean, she wasn't happy, but she was like getting by, because she was like, I'm just surviving, like, I'm just happy
Yeah.
not to be where I was before. And Serena was one who pushed her to say, look, you need to find something that's other than me. And
Mhm.
while it was harsh, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
Misery discovered that, and she's the one who got there eventually. But I do love that you can have a protagonist that is both strong and struggling.
Yeah. And that's the complexity we enjoy
Mhm.
in characters like Favorite and Bryce,
Yeah. Yep.
right? They are strong in these areas and they really really struggle
Mhm.
and are damaged in these other areas.
Yeah, and I don't think that that was a thing that was introduced at the beginning and then given up, because I think
Right.
sometimes, whether it's this or other books that we've discussed or other things in general, other books, I do think sometimes, like, authors will introduce something at the top, and it's like, and here's their struggle, and now this isn't going to impact anything they do for the rest of the book.
Mhm.
And now this,
Mhm.
like, but I started off with this, so they're just like you. This was something that I felt like was true to her character, and it was a byline that kept being true. And part of
Yeah.
the things that she resolved at the end was that choice of like, oh no, this is what I want. This is how I want to live my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And that's what I do think Allie Hazelwood has done the best
Mhm.
out of the books I've read of hers in
Mhm.
this book, is that I'm not just putting two quirky characters together and then writing about sex.
Yeah.
It's I'm putting two characters that have flaws that they're still working through
Yeah.
and letting that lead the narrative.
Well said.
Thank you.
Wow. You should have a podcast. Is my humor too much for you tonight?
Apparently, I'm just really slap happy.
No, I
I'm
love
very
it.
tired.
It's making me feel great.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So let's get into the conversation of Misery. As if we haven't been talking about her, but let us continue. So there's no way of talking about Misery without talking about her personality and her sense of humor. And it is such a mixed bag when it comes to it.
Yeah.
I will say, from my own personal, it took me a beat to get on board with her, because it was
Oh,
just like
really?
shoving down my throat. And then once I was there, I was there. Don't get me wrong. But it was
Mhm, mhm.
initially kind of like okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't struggle. I think it's because her writing style is my brand of my preferred flavor of funny,
Yeah, yeah.
maybe is what it is. And maybe in my head, I think I speak like Ellie Hazelwood's characters. Maybe that might be part of it. I just really connect with it, so I really enjoy it. I think, I don't know, how can you not love
I
someone who's like, "Go away, child. I want nothing to do with you."
I do love Misery. I think part of my initial thing was she felt like me, like I related to her, but before my bipolar medication and if I was on Red Bull. Like, if I was just like before things calmed down and like cranked up to 100, I mean, I think I do love the like, yeah, go be gone, child, go.
Mhm.
I it is hilarious. It I think that for me that's what it was, where I was like, "Oh, we're really being sarcastic," which is
Yeah.
hilarious because I love sarcasm, but it
Mhm,
was
mhm.
like dialed to 10.
Yeah.
And good for her for not trying to introduce it to the reader in a slow way. Like, it was like, because Misery is a 10
Yeah.
personality wise, and she was a 10 from the start, 10 from the ending. My cousin, Evelyn, shout out, we were texting and she was just like, immediately was like, this is my favorite character all time.
I totally an Evelyn character too. I would totally believe
You're my
it.
Tauruses. You guys, I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's funny when you're like, she's what I am. And I'm like, what? And then you said the go away child. I'm like, yeah, there it is. There's the
That's
Amy I
me.
know.
I think we don't expect the inner monologue to sound the way Misery sounds, because so much of the inner monologue we read in other books is palatable to everyone.
Yeah.
And it is not unique to the character.
Mm-hmm.
What we most often get in Allie Hazelwood's books, I believe, and more so in this book, is you are truly in the character's head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being in Jacqueline's head would be a very unique experience.
I would not recommend it.
Just like being in Misery's head is a very unique experience. And you have to be ready to take that on.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone is the first time they're going to read this book. And I get that.
Yeah. I love that you bring up her inner monologue, because like we just this week the episode of From Blood and Ash came out, so I was doing a lot of editing there. But it reminds me of something that you said, where inner monologues don't always match the conversation. And when it came to Misery, her inner monologue, sometimes some things she kept to herself, like you would for anything. It was still Misery. There was no difference between the personalities inside her head versus not inside her head.
Yep.
Those were still the same. And yet she still managed to hold back the way that anyone would hold back. And to be able to do that is very impressive, especially with a character like Misery, who isn't afraid to say a lot of things.
Exactly. And it is refreshing for the narrative to match the dialogue of your protagonist.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because if we go back to From Blood and Ash, since that's what came out this week, it is such a disconnect.
Yeah.
But then to go into, and I would say that's sometimes the case in A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yep.
But maybe less of a case in Crescent City.
Yeah. Agree. That's a great comparison. Sometimes Feyre was way funnier in her head than she ever would talk out loud.
Yeah, it's true. Or just not funny at all.
Yeah. She had her moments.
Sometimes.
It's, I think that Allie nailed the translation between head to voice.
Yep. Which I think is important in especially first person narrative styles.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to part 1 of this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. Stick around for part 2, which airs on Thursday.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you would like to submit your take on any of the books we plan to discuss later this summer, please be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we ask for listener submissions.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle BookTalk4BookTalk. Bye. Misery.
Oh my god.
Don't worry.
I'm so embarrassed.
She loves
I'm
company.
So embarrassed. She does.
She's also in the business of it.
Good for her.
Let's take it from the top.
Am I allowed to go now?
Yeah, but it was fun.
Yes, I know all the jokes you're making and I don't know how to respond to them.
I was like, did you freeze? You're not laughing at me, Amy.
You're intimidating me with your cleverness.
Oh my god. Oh. All right, go ahead. I'll stay quiet.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm so sorry.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.